Welcome to our presentation on migrating legacy apps to the cloud. In the next few moments, I want to talk about some techniques that you can consider for migrating any legacy solution. That might be something built in FileMaker Pro, Lotus Notes, Lotus Domino, IBM, Excel, FoxPro, etc., and migrating that solution to the cloud via Force.com. I'd like to start by quickly talking through just some of the basic migration items or checklist things that we consider part of a successful migration. The first thing is an initial sort of needs analysis or call to really understand how the legacy tool works. That usually involves some kind of extraction of data, either a sample spreadsheet or even real data from the system, so we can understand the data model and also understand what's involved in data migration. The third step is to rapidly configure a solution based on that initial call and based on that data extraction, and really give you an understanding of how the solution will work, followed by the possibility of researching existing apps on AppExchange and leveraging existing tools that may already provide certain functionality. And then finally, testing the system and making sure that it works and that your users understand how it works. And then, of course, migrating existing data as well as training. So with that said, I want to just talk briefly about this initial call and what kinds of things we look for and the kinds of things you can think about and look for when you're talking about how to evaluate an existing tool. The first thing is you want to look at the existing user interface. And this is very helpful in helping you understand what the existing tool does and how it works and what need it meets for your existing users. That is followed by understanding any unique business logic or automation that the tool does. And underlying both of these is sort of, this is a technique that we use to really try to understand what the core business process is. Because at the heart of any solution is really the understanding of what's the business process I'm trying to automate and how do I properly align people, process, and technology. And then finally, it's dealing with the existing data. What will we need to do with that data to make sure it's usable in a new system? And that might be as simple as just bringing it over, or it might be something more complex like actually reformatting the data or cleaning it up. Okay, so I want to go through an existing client case study with you that you can sort of use to understand how we do this. So the client that we're going to use is a small LASIK surgery practice in Southern California, and they were using a legacy FileMaker Pro system that they were very, very unhappy with. They found that they really needed to consolidate all of their practice data because they had some information in their FileMaker system and they had some in spreadsheets that they wanted to do marketing with. And so this is an example of one of the screenshots that I took during that initial call. And this is an example of their calendar that they were using in that system. And so it looks like a traditional FileMaker Pro system. And when designed properly, it worked really, really well. But there were so many other things in the system that were sort of a negative for them. But I should say, it was very, very important that we have a calendar function. So this is an example of another screenshot that we took, just kind of a feel for the tab nature in the fields and just kind of an older interface and just not as elegant as some of the newer technologies. So what we learned from the call is that the users basically hated the system. They wanted an app that was much more complicated, or they had an app that was much more complicated than they needed because the original app was built for medical practices that had much more complex billing than they did. The client absolutely needed their existing data. There was no question. In fact, they wouldn't even move forward until we could confirm that we could extract their data. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. In addition, the client felt hostage to the solution and to the provider. I mean, they really felt like they had a gun to their head, and they really felt like they couldn't move and couldn't make choices because of some of the limitations. In addition to that, they needed a faster solution, and they also didn't want servers on site anymore. So all of this kind of pointed to the cloud, and obviously pointed to Force.com. So from that initial call, a basic design emerged. And so number one, they needed a calendar. Number two, they needed the ability to manage contacts for patients, the ability to manage appointments, invoices, and payments. And so I'll show you in just a minute some examples of how we built that in Force.com and how that lined up with what they needed. And then finally, they needed to see the available time slots, and so that kind of points back to that calendar design. But these were the major things that came out of that call. And again, the purpose of that call is to really sort of boil down what are the key things that we need and how does that work. And then again, big data thing, they needed to get all their patient appointments. So I'd like to take a few moments and show you exactly how we prototyped this system for this particular client, and how we used the data extract and other things that they gave us, including the initial review call, to really understand their business. The first thing to mention is that when we create a trial org for a customer, we're actually creating a real instance of Force.com for them. So in this example, we have a real login, real access to a system, and it's a live system. Now, no one's using it in the initial stage when we're doing prototyping, but the point I want to make is all of the work that we build into a prototype, which I don't really like that word because we're just doing rapid configuration, but all of that work that we build into that org for that customer is readily available the moment they want to start using it and do training, and that's a very important point. So as we mentioned in that previous example, after talking through with the customer what they needed, we really found out that they needed a couple of basic things. They needed the ability to do calendaring, and we determined that the standard Force.com calendar needed to be enhanced. So we went with an off-the-shelf app called Calendar Anything, which I'll show in just a moment. They needed information about their contacts or patients. They needed the ability to schedule appointments, the ability to handle invoices and payments. Now, I'm not going to go through every single one of these because I just wanted to show some basic ideas of how the prototyping or the rapid configuration works. The first thing, though, is let's talk about the calendar. So what we realized with them is they needed the ability to demonstrate or show available calendar appointments. And so in this example, we're using this tool called Calendar Anything, and the green that you see right now are appointments that are available. And if I wanted to actually see real exams, I can overlay on top of that actual exams. And so this tool, combined with the custom object appointment that we created, enables them to see very clearly the different appointments and information that they have. So it's very, very easy to integrate the prototype, for lack of a better word, that we built with this tool called Calendar Anything. The next thing we did is we modified the contact layout. And so, again, we go back to this contact, and we added additional fields that allowed us to capture information about this individual person. And so the addition of these fields literally took minutes. The ability to add fields with pick lists and those kinds of things. We used a lot of the data that was available from the other system to identify the kinds of things that we wanted, combined with that initial review call and our notes from that call to really design an interface and a screen that had the information that they wanted. And one of the additional things that they said they needed was the ability to do invoicing. And so this is an example of a custom screen that we created using standard configuration, meaning this is a standard Salesforce interface, but the object name invoice and the fields that you see on this are custom. We created them. But literally, this took probably an hour to 2 hours to create. And most of that time was deciding, do I actually need a quantity field, et cetera, et cetera. But the beauty of this is that this information pulls price lists from a list of available procedures. It allows them to identify quantity and or discounting, and then total all that information up, and then also link that to payments. And so in this example, here's 2 payments. And the primary page, the invoice page, totals up their payments from the payment section. So this is all standard Salesforce configuration that just needed to be configured for their particular use. And so this is an example of taking the information from that review call and that sample data, and obviously conversations about changes in their business process, and developing a working prototype or working system based on their needs, and to do it quickly and efficiently. One of the questions you might be asking is, what was the level of effort associated with migrating this? So from start to finish, this project took essentially 4 to 5 weeks. In addition to that, it took roughly 60 hours of consulting time and cost. And I'll talk a little bit more about the major area that consumed most of that time. In addition to that, data migration was the biggest issue. So of that 60 hours, I would say 40 to maybe even 50 hours of that was dealing with data. So the actual design that I'll show you in a second was not that significant. So with the screenshots and the conversation and the analysis, we were able to develop something that's very elegant very quickly. Extracting the data and migrating the data and cleansing the data were some of their bigger issues. And it's important to point out they had roughly 100,000 patients and close to 500,000 appointments, invoices, and payments. So they had a lot of data that we were dealing with. But again, we deduped and cleaned up the data and made that easier to use. So after this, what was some of their feedback? And obviously at some point you might be able to talk to this customer, but one of the things that they were just overwhelmed with was how easy Force.com was to use. In addition to that, we didn't spend a tremendous amount of time training them. We did maybe 2 to 3, 30, maybe 45-minute training sessions, maybe one a week for the first couple weeks, just to get everybody kind of squared away and up and running. In addition to that, they had access now to a system that was fully deployed in the cloud, which means they can access it on their iPhone, their iPad, other tablets. They can access it from anywhere on the web. And I mean, it's a true cloud solution. Now they have that capability, that flexibility. And what I find is the most interesting is now they're asking, what's next? What other capabilities can we add? They've really begun to really see the value of not only being in the cloud, but the rapid nature of the deployment. Okay, so what are the next steps? Well, if you are interested at all in talking about any of these solutions or looking at an existing solution, please feel free to schedule a call with me. There should be a link on this webpage, and you can access my calendar directly and find available times. You can certainly email me at my email address, or feel free to call me. In either case, I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to watch this video and understand a little bit more about how to migrate legacy apps in the cloud. Thank you so much.